everyone and welcome back to my channel. Rather shitty news today. My dad has come down with COVID. I found out this morning when I spoke to him on the phone and it sounded like he had a bad cold and he said he wasn't well because I just thought he sounded tired at first. I said, oh, it's not COVID, is it? And he went, oh no, he said, it's just a bad cold. And I said, well, it could be COVID, I said, because COVID can present like a bad cold. I said, do you have a fever? Have you lost a sense of taste, smell? He hadn't had any of them symptoms, but I said, I think the Omicron strain is a bit different and it presents more like a bad cold and doesn't have those other symptoms necessarily. So I said, you should go and get a flow test, and he went and got one, and yeah, I was right, sure enough it's positive. I knew he had COVID, I just knew it. I mean, obviously, like, I couldn't say absolutely hand on heart, because obviously, you know, colds can present in similar ways, so it could have been a cold, but I sort of knew that it was very likely it was COVID, particularly as he'd gone to London the previous week to attend a concert. When I said, I bet you got it in London, my dad said, well, you can't be certain. Well, of course I can't be certain. You know, he could have got it in a shop, he could have got it anywhere, but I think it's very likely that he got it in London, particularly as he went on a train there and he attended a concert, and obviously there are more germs in London because it's a bigger place. So yeah, it's just odds law, it's got COVID. I knew it was going to happen sooner or later. It was kind of like only a matter of time. He'd so far managed to avoid getting it, but I knew it was only a matter of time. He has obviously had all of his vaccines, so I'm hoping it's only a mild thing and that he doesn't have it too long. All being well and good, it won't be bad. But yeah, it's just fucking sod law, I swear. But it's just sod law, you know what I mean? Obviously, the first thing I think about is obviously the fact my routine's being messed up, which is actually more stressful for me than the fact he's got COVID. Obviously, I am concerned that he's got COVID, and I do worry about that. But like, my biggest concern at the moment is that my routines are going to be messed up, and that's what's really stressing me out. I spoke to a psychologist earlier, who I speak to once a week, and kind of vented with her, so I got it out of my system a bit. Yeah, I've been in contact with Autism Sussex because they said that in this situation they'd be able to do the shopping for me. Obviously, I do have very particular needs around shopping, and I can't just let any old person do it, because that in itself is triggering. I'm hoping that a person from Autism Sussex who I trust and know well, because I've known her for a number of years and she also lives locally, I'm hoping that she'll be able to do the shopping for me. I'm waiting an email response from her. I sent her an urgent email just now about the situation. So if they can do the shopping for me on Friday, and I can give them the list. Although my dad said he probably could do the shopping for me on Sunday, that's no way with my OCD, because he could still have lurgy. There's just no way I'm risking that. I know obviously I wouldn't be seeing him face to face, but like, I already wash my hands and wear gloves when I handle shopping, but that'd be like really, that's just not possible. I wouldn't be able to handle it at all. Next week he should be out for Woods and should be negative come next Friday, but I won't allow him in my porch for some time yet, just to be on the absolute safe side. He'd have to drop shopping off outside. But this week, yeah, Autism Sussex is going to have to do my shopping. There's no way he's doing my shopping this week, even if he doesn't have symptoms come the end of this week. As far as I'm concerned, that's too soon. With my OCD, that's not happening. So yeah, stressful times, but you know what I mean? It's one of these things. I knew it was going to happen sooner or later. Yeah, I knew it. It was going to happen sooner or later. So yeah, and it's also, he was going to have his booster on Saturday as well, but obviously that will have to be deferred now. Also, my booster vaccination is coming up soon, because I'm also in a priority group because of my extreme mental problems. In fact, I can't even live normally because of my OCD, and it's the only way I can even have some sense of security is through vaccination. So I have been allowed to have regular vaccinations, but I think I'm in priority group number 2, which is the people with severe mental problems. So obviously I'm having to wait a bit longer, because I think they're doing it in descending order, starting with those over 60 and then moving down. So I'm not entirely sure when I'm going to be able to have mine, and I'm also getting the flu one as well, because I've been allowed to have that because of my OCD around flu as well. Yeah, that's causing some anxiety. And also the fact that people can be vaccinated loads of times and still get COVID is also triggering, because after all, my dad's had his 4 vaccines and he's just come down with it, and he didn't even have his 4th that long ago. So that in and of itself is triggering, because it's like, I'm no guarantee that just because I've had all these vaccines I can still avoid catching it, so it's not really affecting my OCD significantly, annoyingly. But like I said, without the vaccines, I'm literally screwed completely. So like either way I'm screwed, but at least vaccination gives me some security and makes me feel at least I've done everything within my power to make it milder if I were to catch it. But yeah, I'm really hoping that once I've had the fourth one, I'll at least be able to walk past people in the street again, but I'd have to wear a mask. The only way I'll be able to do that is wear a mask, but you know, it's better than not being able to, which is the current situation. So yeah, shitty times. Okay, let's talk about something a bit more, not cheerful exactly, but let's say less morbid. So I wanted to carry on talking to you about NVLD and autism and its relationship to Asperger's. Because the previous video cut off on me, so I'll carry on talking from where I left off. So it says in this article that many people with non-verbal learning disability often need to talk themselves through tasks because they're prolific talkers. Often their way of learning is to talk themselves through tasks. I do that all the time, and this can obviously be viewed as a bit crazy by other people when a person's constantly talking. They're often known as talking heads who lack emotional insight. Some people say that Asperger's and NVLD are actually different disorders, but there are many similarities in social interaction and information processing. Both conditions exhibit strong verbal skills, attention to detail and good rote memory. There are problems in organisational and executive ability, social interaction, motor clumsiness and visual spatial tasks. Most people with non-verbal learning disability talk and read early. They are prolific talkers and excellent writers. I wouldn't say, the bit about being an excellent writer though, when I was growing up I wouldn't say, I did struggle with certain areas of writing, because I know one of you mentioned that in a box as well about my writing skills, and actually as a child I did struggle, although I could spell really well and I could read well, and as I said I was good at spelling and I had, you know, great decoding abilities and everything, I did struggle with the spatial aspects of writing, because I remember my mum used to get books from the early learning centre to try and get me to write in straight lines, because my writing would often be like all over the place. And also I often had difficulties like organising my thoughts and writing essays and stuff. I remember one time in year 6 at primary school we had to write a diary in the day of the Queen. It's a bit random. Yeah, I just remember that, it was in year 6. We had to write a diary in the day of the Queen. And it was supposed to be done in a particular way, and I basically did completely the opposite of what we were supposed to do. And I didn't write, it was basically for me just a list of times and random facts, and it wasn't like linked up. I've actually still got that bit, that diary in inverted commas somewhere. I should dig it out if I can try and find it, because I know the teacher wrote on it that basically I'd done completely opposite of what was actually asked, because we were supposed to actually sort of write a narrative and make it more like narrative, whereas I just did a list. So yeah, I had difficulties with sort of organising my thoughts on the page. As I got older, as a teenager, towards the end of my teens, I did finally crack the code, and now, as I've said, I can actually write pretty good essays. Most people now would think I'm actually very good at writing. They don't see the amount of effort though it goes into it. It takes a hell of a lot of effort and processing to be able to write. So I can do a good job at it now, but it still takes a lot of effort and energy. It's quite hard work, and takes me a lot longer to do it than, say, maybe, I don't know, someone without the processing difficulties I have. But when I was at school, yeah, it took me a long time to get there, so I haven't always been really, really good at writing. But obviously relative to maths, obviously I've always been better at it than maths, so. But yeah, I'm definitely a prolific talker, obviously. People with NVLD learn best by repeated practice of detail until they can apply the concepts, but the crux of the disorder is a visual perceptual deficit. Okay, so there can be problems getting lost, finding objects in cluttered areas, recognising faces, problems with sports, all of that is visual perception. There can also be difficulties with visual form discrimination. That's the ability to see difference between two similar objects and determine if two shapes, colours, sizes, distances, etc. are same or different. There could be problems with visual memory. With visual memory, yes, I do have some problems with visual memory, but it's mainly, and that was identified in my school report, but that's mainly around kind of visual spatial memory, like remembering the layout of a room or where things are located in a room. I can have difficulties with that, particularly if there's a lot of clutter and it's like a novel environment. It can take me a long time to work things out. But in terms of my long-term visual memory, that's to say remembering events or like things that have happened in the past and things like that, I have a really, really visual memory. So it's a funny thing, my long-term visual memory for events and things that have happened, I have a really clear memory of my childhood, for example, and I think a lot of that's connected to my synesthesia. So certainly in some areas my visual memory is good, but in areas that involve sort of visual spatial, more sort of short-term visual memory, then yeah, I really struggle. So I think it's kind of like, it's not quite the case that I have a blanket problem in all areas, but it's in certain areas I do really struggle, yes, and that was identified on my school report as well. There are problems with visual motor integrations. This can result in clumsiness, where you might place things on edges of the tables where they fall off. Yep, I've historically done that loads of times and got told off for it. Visual motor integration, by the way, is the ability to use sight to guide movement. There could be problems with visual figure ground. That's the ability to see an image within competing background. For example, finding a salt shaker on the table. That's visual figure ground. I definitely have problems with visual figure ground. That happens a lot at AGK. I've been there for years and I still couldn't find things because I got distracted by the rest of the environment. So I'll be staring at something, be right there in front of me, and it would take me literally ages to work out what was in front of me, and then I'd stand there feeling really stupid, like people would be pointing, it's there, it's there, it's there. And also the other thing is because I can't follow gestures and I can't really track what someone's pointing to very easily. I'll be looking all over the place. They'll be pointing in a particular direction and I'll be like looking all over the place because I can't really follow someone's finger very well, because I always find it hard to know what someone's looking at, which again I think is linked to my autism as well, and problems of like reading faces and like the gaze and where someone's looking. So that led to a number of very awkward, clumsy situations and very embarrassing. And it says here that in NVLD there could be problems with some or all areas, and obviously it depends on the individual. There are also problems with spatial perception, for example the arrangement of items on a desk, for order of events in a schedule, and they could struggle to keep track of belongings or time, and they often get lost. There are problems with visual spatial skills, for example maths problems like subtraction, reading maps, and problems with motor spatial skills, which can result with difficulties in things like dancing, following a rhythm, reading comprehension, following meaning through space and time in story. Yep, struggle in all those areas. Reading comprehension was noted as a cause for concern. Motor spatial, which is physical movement through space and time, that's motor spatial. And this can also result in difficulties in maths, for example ordering complex hierarchical tasks in virtual space. And also, of course, all of these problems can result in social problems. Okay, so I'm going to move over to video number 2 now to carry on talking about NVLD and its relation to Asperger's. So moving over to video number 2.